Greetings, here I am in Australia, south of Melbourne, on a beautiful vineyard estate that my friend Sridhar helps to manage. And finally resuming the Vijñāna-bhairava-tantra video series. It paused for some months. I thought it would be some weeks, and it turned into some months because life got very busy and full, as many of you know, with acquiring a retreat center and lots of other things, launching Tantrika Institute, which is still in the process of being launched. It's a huge project to develop a non-sectarian, practitioner-focused educational institution for the study of yogic and tantric arts and sciences. So with multiple faculty, it's a big project, still ongoing, will be ongoing the next few years until we have it all set up, probably. I'm outdoors, as you can see. Let me know, please, if those of you who are on live, please let me know if the wind is obscuring the sound of my voice, and then I could just go inside. So, yeah, okay. Here we are with Vijñāna-bhairava-tantra, verse 86, which is YUKTI 62. And the reason that the video series paused here is because I didn't have time to research, what exactly is going on in this fairly mysterious and difficult verse. It's an abstruse and elliptical verse. And so I knew I needed to look at the commentaries and consult various sources to try to figure out what is actually the practice in this verse. So life didn't get any less busy, but I realized I had to just wedge in the time to do this research so we could get the video series going again. And I'm not the sort of person who wants to just skim over and not do his homework. So what's interesting is, having done the research and read the Sanskrit commentary on this verse, I still don't know what the actual practice is. And here's where it gets interesting, because it's just the nature of the Indian tradition is that traditional teachers are not supposed to admit when they don't know. So what we find is, in various sources, various people sort of just waffling a bit and winging it and just saying something rather than saying, I don't actually know what's going on in this verse. But I'm not bound by any such traditional constraints. So I can admit when I don't know. And my guru taught me that's how people know that they can trust you as a teacher. If you can admit when you don't know, then they know that they can trust you, and you say, oh yeah, no, I definitely know this, because they've heard you say when you don't know. And so she really supported this this epistemic humility, one might call it, this humility about how much we can know and not know about any given subject, and also specifically intellectual honesty, being able to admit when you're not sure about something, so that you can then also reach out to others and say, hey, does anyone have some ideas on this? So that's a little bit about that, and we will now dive into the verse, and I will tell you about some possible interpretations. And before I recite the verse, I'll just mention, for example, I looked at Lakshmanju's commentary, and he certainly wasn't sure what was going on, and he quotes, as usual, he quotes from the Sanskrit commentary by Shivopadhyaya. He would always do that without saying that he was quoting from that commentary. But in this case, it didn't help him much, because if we look at Shivopadhyaya's commentary, we find that he didn't know for sure. In fact, he explicitly says in his commentary, Atra iyam Vedanta Shastra Prakriya. here we could look at some Vedanta sources to possibly explain this verse. He's turning to Vedanta sources because he doesn't have an explanation from within the tantric corpus that was available to him at the time he wrote his commentary in probably the 1600s. So needless to say, when a translator like myself has a very hard time solving the puzzle of a verse and finds out that everyone else has had a hard time with it too, that is a bit reassuring. Okay, having said all that, that's just all the preface. Now we'll look at the verse itself. Vijñāna-bhairava-tantra, verse 86. I've got it written wrong in the little caption here, but I'll correct that verse. It's verse 86, not 85. YUKTI 62, that's correct. Kiṃcij, kiṃcij jñātaṃ sorry, it's hard to pronounce as well. Kiṃcij jñātaṃ dvaitadāyi bāhyālokas tamaḥ punaḥ viśvādi bhairavaṃ rūpaṃ jñātvānanta-prakāśa-bhṛt. So that Sanskrit means, it's fairly straightforward to translate apart from the ellipsis. Having known the three states called viśva and, the verse doesn't tell us, but the commentator fills in the gap, Taijasa and Prājña, having known these three states, which consist respectively of limited knowledge producing the experience of duality, that's state number one, which the commentator takes to mean the waking state, illumination of the remnants of the external, that's state number two, which the commentator takes to refer to the dream state, and then darkness, tamas. Just says that, but we can take that as referring to the deep sleep state. Having known all these three states as the very form of bhairavaṃ rūpaṃ, then the practitioner becomes one who bears or carries or holds within the infinite light of consciousness. Or the practitioner becomes a bearer of the infinite light of consciousness. Of course, one is never anything but that, but this is talking about the experience of it, the direct realization of that truth. So let's break this down a little bit further. So we clearly see in the verse that the instruction is to know something. You need to know or discover or realize something. And you need to realize that these three states are nothing but the form of Bhairava. But the problem is that the verse gives very, very little information. It only gives us the name of the first of the three states, and that name is not very instructive. Viśva literally means everything. So that's the first state, everything state. And then in the commentary, again, not in the source text itself, but a commentary written 800 years later, we get the explanation or the names of two more states, the Taijasa and Prājña states, which are adjectives formed on the basis of the nouns Tajas and Prājña, which respectively mean illumination or radiant energy. Tajas forms an adjective Taijasa, energetic, and Prājña, wisdom or insight, forms an adjective Prājña, the wise state. So these are these three states, assuming that the commentator is correct, and we've already seen that he didn't know and had to draw on Vedantic sources to fill in some possibilities here. But what we do have, we have a little bit of information in the verse about these three states. The first state is kiṃcij jñātaṃ dvaitadāyi. It is a state of limited knowledge that bestows the experience of duality. So this is taken to refer to the waking state. It's a state of limited knowledge in which duality appears real. Subject-object division appears real. It's not, but it appears so in the normal, everyday, ordinary waking state. And then we have this second phrase, bhahyāloka, bhahyālokaha. The illumination of the external is the literal meaning. And this is taken by the commentator to refer to the illumination of the samskaras of the external waking state, meaning dream. Dream is said to be the illumination of the impressions or samskaras of the waking state. So again, if the commentator is right, this refers to dream. And then finally, we just have the word tamas. Tamas means inertia or darkness, but tamas is the guna that draws us into deep sleep. So this is taken to refer to the deep sleep state, right, which is here inexplicably called Prājña. Okay, so we actually get more information in the commentary, but there's some tough going in the commentary, Shivopadhyay's untranslated commentary, because basically what he gets into is some complex stuff from apparently from Vedanta Shastra, where he's talking about that those who are attached to and identified with the waking state are likewise attached to and identified with the stula sharira, the physical body. And those who are attached to and identified with the dream state are likewise attached to and identified with the linga sharira or sukshma sharira, the subtle body, the energy body, right, which is more or less the psyche. And he gives examples of different sorts of identification, or how this identification expresses in different sorts of thoughts, like people who are identified with the energy body and likewise the dream state. They tend to be overly focused on their emotions and identify themselves with their emotions. So that all makes sense because dreams and energy body and emotions, they all go together. And so if you're going to be identified with one, you're going to probably be identified with the other of the same class. And then he talks about people who are identified with the deep sleep state. How? Well, he says these are the folks who, when they meditate, they go into a state of trance-like stupefaction. And then they think that must be my ultimate self. That's my true nature, is this deep, quiet, peaceful, relaxing, but trance-like state of stupefaction. In which, after coming out of it, one says, mudoham, I felt nothing, right? Which is can be a big relief if your body mind is traumatized and you want to escape that into a kind of transcendental trance-like state. Apparently transcendental, I should say. So he says these three forms of identification are all problematic, he being the commentator. Again, drawing on Vedantic sources, he invokes the Vedantic concept of adhyavasaya, superimposition of any of these states onto the self. So one person superimposes the body image onto the self, takes the body or the body image to be self. Another person superimposes the energy body onto self. Another person superimposes this state of nothingness experienced in deep sleep and meditation onto the self. And they're all wrong. And what's the solution then? That you realize the fourth in all three. So the fourth is that state of meditation called turiya or turiya or samadhi, in which you are completely awake, aware, and present, yet totally relaxed, surrendered, open, and not identified with anything. So that is different then from this trance-like state of being in the void or the nothingness. In this turiya state, there might be nothingness, there might not be nothingness, but the most important thing is you're awake and aware but you've relaxed the mind so completely that you've relaxed out of identification. There's no, oh, I'm this or I'm that in this state. And the commentator argues you are to realize this state in waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. Realize turiya in waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. That is what it means to realize all three states as bhairava, as the awe-inspiring power of God. Okay, because that's the instruction in the verse. To realize the three, the verse doesn't even say three, but to realize, the viśva state and the others, it says, as bhairava, as the awe-inspiring power of God. Well, that's not a useful instruction that we can practice with, but if the commentator is correct, we have something we can work with to actually infuse the meditative state of awareness into waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. And again, that's a state of being relaxed and open and unidentified with whatever's going on, whether physical body is present, dream body is present, nothingness is present. You're not identifying with anything, and you're not pushing it away either. As one of my teachers says, the key is, in this mode of existence, the key is neither ownership nor denial of ownership, and then you're free. So that's my best attempt to explain this verse, and it's obviously a very esoteric, very high practice, if it even is a practice. Of course, some scholars like Paul Muller argue that many of these verses of the Vijñāna-bhairava-tantra are not practices. They're not giving practices at all. They're sort of describing mystical realizations had by jñānis or yogis. Maybe, but still, the text does give the word YUKTI, techniques. Though it's true that it never actually says 112 techniques. This is the popular thing. Osho said it, all the popular teachers of this text, Lauren Roche, they all say 112 techniques. Jaidev Singh said it. Everybody says it. But the text never actually says there are 112 techniques. It says there are 112 teachings that towards the end. I believe the word is upadesha. I'll check, but 112 teachings. But elsewhere, it also uses the word yukti, but it doesn't say 112 yuktis. So that might mean then that we have a bunch of techniques and some teachings, and if we add together the teachings and techniques, it's 112, in which case perhaps we're off the hook and trying to always find a practice in each and every verse, because maybe there sometimes isn't one. Okay, I can't see if there's any questions in the chat window, so I will just have to answer any questions after the fact. But we're rolling again. We'll have hopefully a VBT video every week starting now. And we're a little more than halfway through the text, so it should only take another year or so to finish it. Thank you all for being part of this community, and look forward to your comments on this verse. Oh, sorry, postscript, one more thing. There is actually also an alternate reading. That means that we find manuscripts of the text with a different reading of the verse, and that shows the verse certainly confused even scribes of the text, people who are copying it and recopying it over the centuries. We don't know which reading is original. Probably the one I've given you is original, but we have an alternate reading, meaning, again, a reading found in other manuscripts of the text, not bhahyāloka, but brahmaloka. The light of the absolute, Brahmaloka, the light of the absolute, the light of Brahman. It's unlikely to be the correct reading. Then we lose the word tama altogether. If that's the reading, we get Brahmalokas tata punaḥ. A textualist, a philologist would call this an inferior reading for reasons I can't get into without making this video way too long. But yeah, if that was the correct reading of the verse, then it would mean that you enter into this illumination of Brahman that the Vedantins talk about, but that is not the ultimate. You then need to keep going further until you realize bhairava. But then we only have 2 states given, not 3. And we lose the whole kind of, we entirely lose the whole dreaming, waking, dreaming, deep sleep paradigm. So again, that just contributes to our uncertainty around the verse, the fact that there's this alternate reading, but I do think it's unlikely to be original. And it's also possible, of course, that the original reading is entirely lost. It's possible that both readings that we have for the verse in the manuscripts are both corruptions of previously more sensical reading, which is now lost to us. This is the kind of problems that one grapples with if one is an Indologist. The next verse will be easier. See you next week. Om.